My name is Emily, and I'm 24 years old now. But the story I'm about to tell started 6 years ago, when I was just 18 and thought I had my whole life ahead of me. What happened back then changed everything: the way I see my family, the way I trust people, even the way I see myself. I've never spoken the full truth out loud, not to my friends, not to anyone. But the weight of it hasn't gone away. If anything, it's grown heavier with time. So today, I'm finally going to let it out, all of it. I grew up in a small, quiet town in the Midwest, the kind of place where everyone knows your name, where gossip spreads faster than the wind, and where nothing much ever changes. It was just me and my mom for as long as I can remember. My dad wasn't around, not even a memory, not even a photo on the wall. If I ever asked about him, she'd just brush it off and say he wasn't worth talking about. And so it was always just us, a team of two. She worked long hours, sometimes 2 or 3 jobs at a time, waitressing, cleaning houses, doing whatever she had to do to keep the lights on and food on the table. We were far from wealthy, most months were tight, and hand-me-downs were the norm, but I never questioned it. She used to come home exhausted, her feet aching and eyes bloodshot, but I thought she was the strongest woman alive. She'd sigh and collapse on the couch, sometimes still in her uniform, and I'd bring her a glass of water. I thought that was love. I thought that was family. Looking back now, I realize I saw her through the eyes of a daughter desperate to believe her mom was a hero. But heroes don't do what she did to me. Things began to shift when I was 16. That's when Rick showed up, tall, confident, and always flashing that too-perfect smile that made my skin crawl even before I knew why. He was the kind of guy who talked like he was trying to sell you something, every word slick and rehearsed. My mom met him through a coworker, and suddenly he was everywhere. At first, he was polite, even overly so. Brought flowers for her. Brought me a book once, like he'd read somewhere that teenage girls like that kind of thing. But it all felt forced, like he was putting on a performance just long enough to get what he wanted. Rick had 2 kids of his own from a previous marriage, Julia, who was just a year younger than me, and Max, who was 12 and already acting like he owned every room he walked into. At first, it was awkward but tolerable. Then 6 months in, Rick and his kids moved into our tiny house. It felt sudden, like I blinked and lost half my space and all of my peace. And within a year, Mom married him. No big wedding, no celebration, just a courthouse visit and a quick dinner after. She didn't even tell me until it was already done. That was the first time I truly felt like a guest in my own home. From the moment Rick and his kids arrived, the house stopped feeling like mine. It wasn't subtle, the shift was instant. My room became the one with the squeaky door no one fixed. My dinners became whatever was left after everyone else got seconds. My opinions became interruptions. Everything revolved around Rick and his kids. And the message was clear: I was no longer the priority. I went from being her daughter to being a ghost in the background. It was like someone flipped a switch and erased me from the center of her world. Julia, now the golden child, got everything: new clothes every season, trips to amusement parks, spa days with Mom like they were besties. Max had private basketball coaching, signed up for every camp he wanted, and was gifted the newest gear even before he asked. Meanwhile, I was still using the same clothes from sophomore year, patching up my shoes with duct tape and hoping no one noticed. When Julia turned 16, my mom threw a party that looked like it came straight off a reality TV show. Catered food, a custom-made cake with glittering fondant, a DJ spinning tracks all night, and a brand new car parked in the driveway with a massive red bow. The whole neighborhood came. Rick was beaming, clinking drinks with everyone like he just married royalty. And me? I watched from the edge of the yard, pretending not to care. When I turned 16 a year earlier, I got a box cake from the grocery store and a set of towels wrapped in clearance wrapping paper. "You'll need them when you move out someday," my mom said. Like she couldn't wait. It wasn't just birthdays or money. It was every small moment, every little reminder that I wasn't one of them. I'd ask to go to the movies with friends and be told, "We don't have extra money this month." Then I'd come home the next day to find Julia and Max out shopping with Mom, bags of new clothes on the couch. I didn't just feel excluded, I felt erased. But I didn't say anything. I swallowed it all. I told myself it was temporary, that maybe Mom was just trying too hard to blend families, that maybe if I kept my head down and stayed out of the way, things would balance out eventually. So I focused on what I could control: school, work, and my future. I picked up 2 part-time jobs, one at a diner that opened before sunrise, and one shelving books at the local library after school. I worked 6, sometimes 7 days a week, juggling homework during lunch breaks and saving every dollar I could scrape together. I didn't go to parties. I didn't buy clothes unless I absolutely had to. I ate ramen so often I memorized every flavor. All of it was for college. That was my ticket out. I'd been dreaming about getting away from that house since Rick first stepped through the door, and I knew the only way I'd ever escape for good was with education. I didn't have rich relatives, I didn't have anyone to co-sign loans, and I sure as hell wasn't going to rely on my mom anymore. So I saved. Every babysitting gig, every cash tip, every little windfall, I put it all in a joint savings account with my mom, because I wasn't 18 yet and I needed her name on it. I didn't like it, but I didn't think I had a choice. I trusted that she wouldn't touch it. I needed to believe that. By the end of the summer after graduation, I had managed to save $6,500. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to cover my first year at community college, textbooks, supplies, and a little extra for emergencies. I remember the day I hit that number. I stared at the balance on my phone, sitting alone on my lunch break, and nearly cried. I'd done it. I built something for myself. My hands earned that money, and in my mind, that account wasn't just about tuition, it was freedom. It was hope. It was proof that I mattered, even if no one at home acted like I did. Then, just 2 weeks before classes were supposed to start, I logged into my account while on break at the diner. I'd been planning to pay for tuition that day. I remember holding my breath, excited to finally do it, to make it official. But when the screen loaded, my stomach dropped. The balance read $0. At first, I thought there had to be some mistake. Maybe I clicked the wrong account. Maybe the app was glitching. I refreshed the page. Nothing. I checked my transaction history, and that's when I saw it. A single, large withdrawal had cleared 2 days earlier. My heart started pounding so hard I thought I might be sick. I called the bank right away, hands shaking as I punched in my information. After 10 minutes on hold, a rep calmly explained that the funds had been withdrawn in person by someone authorized on the account. That meant my mom. She was the only other person listed. I asked if there was anything I could do, any way to reverse the transaction. The answer was no. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. I remember sitting in the back alley behind the diner after the call, staring at the wall, not even crying, just numb. All that work, all those late nights, all those missed parties and meals skipped. It was just gone. Erased in a moment by the person I trusted most. I didn't even go back inside to finish my shift. I walked home in a daze, rehearsing what I was going to say, still hoping there was some explanation, a mistake, an emergency, something that made this make sense. That night, I confronted her. I walked into the living room, my hands still trembling, phone clutched so tightly it might have cracked. She was sitting on the couch watching TV like nothing had happened. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream. I just asked, quietly, "Did you take my money?" She didn't even blink. Didn't flinch. She looked at me like I was asking if she'd moved the laundry. "Yeah," she said. "I used it." Just like that. Like it was no big deal. Like it wasn't my entire future sitting in that account. I stood there frozen, trying to make sense of it. "Why?" I asked. "That was my college fund. I worked for that." And she sighed. Sighed. As if she were the one being inconvenienced. "Rick needed help with school expenses for Julia and Max," she said, like that made it okay. "They're starting school too, you know." I just stared at her, mouth open. She used the money I saved for college, my dreams, my escape, to buy clothes, supplies, probably even a damn phone for Julia. And she said it like I was being selfish for questioning it. I tried to explain, tried to make her see what she'd done. That it wasn't just money, it was everything I'd worked toward. But she just waved her hand and said, "We're a family. Everyone contributes. You're not the only one with needs." That was it. That was the moment I realized I didn't have a place in that house anymore. Not really. I wasn't her daughter. I was just a resource. An ATM with a beating heart. I didn't sleep that night. I just laid there in that tiny room they'd stuck me in after giving my bedroom to Julia, staring at the ceiling, feeling like the walls were closing in. Everything I had built in my head, the plan, the escape, the future I'd fought for, was gone. And what hit the hardest wasn't even the money. It was realizing that the person I called Mom had chosen someone else's children over me again. Without hesitation. Without guilt. The next morning, I packed a suitcase. I didn't have much, just some clothes, a few notebooks, the half-broken laptop I'd saved up for sophomore year. I didn't even say goodbye. I left a note on my pillow that just said, "Don't call me." Then I called my cousin Sarah. She was 10 years older, lived about 30 minutes away, and had always been my soft place to land when things got rough. I hadn't planned on this. I didn't even know where she'd put me or for how long. But when I called her, voice cracking and barely holding it together, all she said was, "Come here. Right now." When I got to her apartment, I broke down the second she opened the door. She didn't ask questions. Didn't press. She just pulled me into a hug so tight it felt like it held my whole body together. She handed me a blanket, said a pizza delivery order on her phone, and told me, "We'll figure it out later. Right now, you rest." And for the first time in years, I felt like someone actually saw me. Not as a problem, not as a chore, just as me. The first few weeks at Sarah's were a blur of emotions I hadn't even realized I'd been holding in. Some mornings I woke up feeling okay, thinking maybe I could bounce back quickly, find a job, get back into school, just keep going. Other days, I didn't want to leave the couch. I'd lie there with the blanket Sarah gave me, scrolling through my phone, trying not to cry every time I saw a college ad or a friend posting about their dorm move-in. I felt behind. Like everyone else's life was starting, and mine had just hit a wall and dropped off a cliff. But Sarah was my anchor. She didn't let me stay in that dark place. She didn't force me to get up either. She'd just sit next to me, hand me coffee, and turn on some trashy reality show until I cracked a smile. She reminded me every day, gently, that I wasn't broken, that I wasn't wrong for leaving, that what happened wasn't my fault. And slowly, I started to believe her. We made a list, literally, a handwritten list on the back of an old envelope of what I needed to do. Open a new bank account that my mom didn't have access to. Apply for food service jobs nearby. Look into community college classes that I could pay for one at a time. Sarah even offered to cover my first class, but I said no. I needed to do this on my own. For me, that list became my first step toward taking my life back. Getting a job again wasn't glamorous, but it was grounding. I ended up working at a small coffee shop a few blocks from Sarah's apartment. The pay wasn't amazing, and I came home smelling like espresso and sour milk most days. But for the first time in a while, I felt useful. I wasn't just surviving, I was doing something. I showed up early, stayed late, learned how to handle rush hours, angry customers, and broken espresso machines. And bit by bit, the tips started adding up. Enough for groceries. Enough to stash away in a new savings account that was mine and mine alone. I stopped checking my old account, the one my mom had wiped clean. I didn't want to look at it, didn't want to relive that sting. Instead, I'd open the app for my new account and watch every dollar grow. $20 here, $50 there. It sounds small, but to me, it was everything. Proof that I was no longer under her thumb. And then came the day I paid for my first community college class out of my own pocket. I still remember walking into the registrar's office, my palms sweating, the receipt trembling slightly in my hand. It was just one class, an intro to marketing, but it felt like I was finally back on track. Like I was reclaiming my future, one credit at a time. Sarah came home that night with a bottle of sparkling cider and 2 plastic champagne glasses. First class paid. That calls for a celebration, she said, grinning like I just graduated with honors. We toasted on the couch in our pajamas, reality TV playing in the background, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I believed that maybe I could do this. Living with Sarah wasn't just a physical escape from my mother's house, it was emotional rehab. For the first time in my life, I lived with someone who asked me how my day was, who waited for my opinion before making decisions, who treated me like an equal. Sarah never pressured me to talk about my mom or Rick unless I wanted to. She gave me space, but was always there, like the safety net I never knew I needed. Our days settled into a rhythm. I'd work early shifts at the coffee shop, then come home and crash for a bit before studying or tackling assignments. On weekends, Sarah and I would go grocery shopping together, split cheap takeout, and binge-watch trashy reality TV. We started a little tradition Friday nights on the couch, pajamas, dumplings or tacos, and a running commentary on whatever show was the latest train wreck. It sounds simple, but those nights saved me. In that little apartment, surrounded by warmth and kindness, I started remembering who I was outside of my mother's shadow. I wasn't the background character anymore. I wasn't the girl who got hand-me-downs while her stepsister lived like royalty. I was Emily, a woman learning how to breathe again, how to trust herself, how to laugh without waiting for the other shoe to drop. And slowly, the anger started to fade. Not because what happened didn't matter, it did, but because I refused to let it define me. I wasn't going to let the woman who stole my college fund also steal my peace. So I kept moving forward, one small victory at a time. Meanwhile, I barely heard from my mom. Weeks would go by with nothing, No calls, no messages. And when she did finally reach out, it wasn't to ask how I was doing or if I was okay. It was always about her. Always about what she needed. I hope you're thinking about coming home soon. We need to talk about how you're going to contribute to the family. There was never a moment where she said, I'm sorry. Never an ounce of remorse for what she'd done. It was like she couldn't even comprehend why I left, like my absence was just a phase I was supposed to outgrow. I'd read those messages and feel the old pressure creeping in, the sense of guilt she had been so good at planting in me for years. I'd reread them late at night, questioning myself. Was I being too cold? Was I abandoning her? But then I'd remember what happened, that bank account drained, that conversation in the living room where she looked at me and casually dismissed my entire future. That memory never let me forget the truth. And it was that truth that helped me stay strong and not reply. My cousin Sarah saw the struggle. She'd catch me staring at my phone with that look on my face, the one I thought I had well. She hasn't changed, Sarah would remind me gently. You don't owe her anything. And I needed to hear that. Because deep down, even after everything, there was still a part of me that longed for the mom I thought I had before Rick. The one who tucked me in when I was little. The one who packed my lunch with silly notes. But that woman had vanished long ago, and in her place was someone I couldn't trust. I did hear bits and pieces about what was going on at home from my Uncle Dave, who, thankfully, I'd always been close with. He was one of the few adults in my life who never treated me like I was less than or dramatic for standing up for myself. We'd chat occasionally, quick phone calls, a message here or there, and every now and then, he'd give me an unsolicited update about my mom and her new family. It was never good news, but it always confirmed what I already knew deep down. Nothing had changed. Rick was still playing king of the couch, according to Dave. Still unemployed. Still pretending he was the man of the house while my mom worked overtime just to keep the lights on. Julia had apparently joined some expensive private cheerleading team that required travel and custom uniforms. Max was now taking private guitar lessons because, of course, they had money for that. Meanwhile, my mom was burning herself out to make it all happen, stretching herself thinner and thinner with every new demand. I couldn't help but wonder if she even noticed how much of herself she was losing, or if Rick just made sure she didn't. One day, during a particularly long call, Dave casually mentioned, "Oh, and your mom got Julia a new iPhone for her birthday." He said it like it was just another minor detail. But I felt that familiar sting, like someone had reached into my chest and pressed on a bruise that never healed. A new iPhone. The same mom who told me we couldn't afford piano lessons, who gave me towels for my 16th birthday, who stole my college fund, had just dropped hundreds of dollars on a phone for her stepdaughter. I could feel my grip on the phone tightening as I tried to smile through it. Of course she did, I muttered, probably a little too bitter. But honestly, by that point, I had stopped being surprised. They had their picture-perfect little family. The golden trio. And I was the forgotten draft, the inconvenient reminder of who my mom used to be before she chose them. And you know what? That was fine. Let them keep playing house. I was finally learning how to build something real, without any of them. By the time I turned 20, things were starting to turn around. Slowly, steadily, but undeniably. I had saved up enough to transfer from community college to a proper university about an hour away. It wasn't some elite private school or anything flashy, but it was mine. I moved into a shared off-campus apartment with two other girls, both of whom were focused, kind, and didn't come with years of family drama attached. For the first time in my life, I had roommates who respected me, boundaries that were actually honored, and a space that felt like I belonged. Those first few weeks at the new school were a blur of nervous excitement. New classes, new professors, a new environment where no one knew me as the girl with a messed-up family. I could just be Emily, the marketing major who loved indie coffee shops, late-night study sessions, and playlists for every mood. And I thrived. I kept my part-time job at a local bookstore cafe, which wasn't exactly a financial windfall, but it was enough to cover groceries, rent, and the occasional treat like movie night with my roommates or a thrift store splurge. And every time I paid a bill with money I earned or aced an assignment I stayed up all night perfecting, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: pride. I was finally breathing again. Not surviving, living. Really living. I had a sense of control over my time, my space, my choices. It was like stepping out of a thunderstorm and realizing you had no idea how loud the rain was until it stopped. There were no Rick rants echoing through the house, no Julia slamming doors or monopolizing mom's attention, no guilt-tripping text messages every time I tried to carve out a bit of peace for myself. Just silence. And possibility. And the more distance I had from them, the more I realized just how much they'd taken from me, not just the money, but the emotional energy, the sense of self-worth. But I was rebuilding. One class, one paycheck, one boundary at a time. I walked out of that cafe lighter than I'd felt in years. Not because I forgave her, not because everything was magically okay, but because I had said what I needed to say, and for once, she had listened without trying to twist it. That night, I sat on my little apartment balcony, the city buzzing faintly in the background, and realized just how far I'd come. I wasn't that girl anymore, the one who gave and gave until there was nothing left. I had boundaries now, a future, a quiet strength built from every hard-earned lesson. Maybe one day my mom and I will rebuild something. Maybe we won't. But either way, I'm not looking back. I'm finally living for me, and that's more than enough.